Japan is nearing the major integration phase with Ripple and XRP. And I know that it might sound like a crazy clickbait title or even statement, but no, this is actually happening. Let's lock in and let's talk about exactly what's going on right now in Japan. So let's start off with, of course, going back to the beginning of the year, January 5th, where we got a big update regarding Japan's Minister of Finance saying that she supports integrating crypto into the financial system. Now, this was a major signal sent out to the industry that yes, Japan is ready. Now, when I think of Japan, I immediately think of XRP. Why? Because again, we know that Ripple and XRP have been massive names in Japan for well over now. It has to be at least six years, maybe even more. It goes back to like the early days. I would argue like 10 years, going back to like 2016, because that's where we have this post from. March 2nd, 2017, 47 Japanese banks moved towards commercial phase using Ripple. Now, obviously, it's, been nearly 10 years since this post, but still, we know that these major banks are still tapped in. How do we know? Well, because banks are not giving up a position in this new system. The only reason why we haven't been witnessing major announcements from all of these banks or major moves happening, I strongly believe that it's NDAs. I think that NDAs are in place. I also think that regulations are a big bottleneck behind a lot of this stuff. It's the same exact reason why when we look at this, right, we have Santander, Bank of America, and Axis Bank. Like some of these banks, like Bank of America and Santander, like you don't even know that they're connected with Ripple. But we know at some point in time, they definitely were, but NDAs are in place. There's, contracts, things like that. But when I look at all of these major Japanese banks, I can't help but to come to the realization that, when we think about 47 banks back in 2017, imagine how many Japanese banks are tied to Ripple now. Because again, we know that SBI is a major supporter of Ripple. And back in 2021, they converged with I think it was 19 banks or 20 banks. So this 47 number could very well be, 70, 80, maybe even 100 banks. But it goes to show you just how deep Ripple is already in the traditional system, because this post was from 2017. Now, on top of this, back in September, Japan was leading in crypto adoption. They saw a 120% year-over-year increase in on-chain value. Again, this is because Japan is ready. They are starting to push things forward. They are starting to accelerate crypto adoption and integrations. But then we got the big update. That's right, March 3rd. Yeah, I'm not paying Reuters. I'm sorry, guys. I just simply am not paying Reuters. So when we go over here to the actual title of this article, Bank of Japan to experiment with blockchain settlement for reserves. It got posted on March 2nd, got updated on March 3rd. But yes, the Bank of Japan is ready to experiment with blockchain. I do have the document open over here. We're going to get to that here in a moment. But this is a massive announcement. Now, we have over here from March 3rd, this is basically the initial announcement. Bank of Japan expands blockchain settlement sandbox and says CBDC efforts are ongoing. The Bank of Japan is testing blockchain settlement for reserves and exploring tokenized central bank money as it prepares to decide in 2026 whether to issue a retail digital yen. Now, I believe that every single nation, every single fiat currency will be in a stablecoin form. I believe that we will have a digital yen. I believe that we are going to have a digital everything. But if we build on top of this, we have down here that the Bank of Japan has launched a blockchain-based sandbox project to test settlements using central bank reserves held as current account deposits. the project will explore how blockchain systems can connect with existing infrastructure for use cases such as domestic interbank and securities settlement, which analysts say could enable instant round-the-clock transactions and reduce gridlock risk. Now, the governor said that the Bank of Japan's retail central bank digital currency pilot remains underway, while Japan also participates in Project Agora to test tokenized wholesale central bank deposits for more efficient cross-border payments. Now, Project Agora is from the BIS, the Bank for International Settlements. And by the way, the BIS working with Ripple on the CPMI group, which is the cross-border payments market infrastructure. I mean, guys, like when we think about some of these connections and some of these projects, like the CPMI group, I really look back at the CPMI group because we know major central banks were tied back to that. Swift was tied back to that. And Ripple was one of like the only blockchain-based names tied back to it. But I would argue that that's just kind of like a reach here with Project Agora, but that's not like the main connection. The main thing that I'm actually looking at with what's happening here is that multiple blockchains will be tied to this. We have in this experimental project, the bank will conduct technical experimentation on settlement using central bank money in the form of current account deposits on a system that uses blockchains. Methods of connection with the existing system, as well as examining use cases such as domestic interbank settlement and security settlement. So this is a very big deal. First, the ongoing pilot program for retail central bank digital currency involves the bank's continued conduct of technical experiments, which will make it possible to provide a digital form of cash when in demand by the wider public. Now, on top of that, again, we think about Project Agora. It's a big one. It's basically building a mechanism that would enable central banks, including the Bank of Japan, to issue central bank money as tokenized deposits on the blockchain. Again, you still need a public blockchain. And we have here that it may bring innovation in terms of streamlining cross-border payments. Interesting. Very interesting, because again, they're still locked in on cross-border payments. And Japan has always been a big, name for both Ripple and XRP. But then we go back to January 27th. Japan is preparing to recognize XRP as a regulated financial asset under the Financial Instruments and Exchange Act, with implementation targeted for Q2 of 2026. Now, it's not just XRP, it's many cryptocurrencies, but we do have here that this is a major shift. XRP moves from being targeted as a simple crypto asset to a fully recognized investment product, bringing legal clarity, investor protection, and a clear framework for institutions. At the same time, Japan is actively building its tokenized economy on the XRP ledger, aligning regulation with real-world utility. Regulation doesn't slow innovation, it decides who survives. Now, yeah, this definitely benefits XRP in a big way because of how big XRP is in Japan. But on top of that, like we think about how big of a move this is for XRP, but then I can't help but to go back to this article. Again, I'm bringing this back up because we're talking about a digital yen potentially. We're talking about tokenization. We're talking about, cross-border payments. And then I go back to August 2025, where SBI and Ripple were planning to distribute ROUSD in Japan. Now, again, the end of this month is the goal for this, because they said by the end of the second or the end of Q1 for 2026. So again, this would be like the main focus from my point of view. Obviously, with ROUSD, it's not a yen-based stablecoin, it's ROUSD. But I do think that we will most likely start to see other stablecoins like RO Yen, RLGBP. Like we're going to see multiple stablecoins launching on the XRP ledger that are, fiat based. But I do think that this is a big one because it is with SBI. It's with SBI VC Trade as well as SBI Ripple Asia. So I do think that this is definitely a big one to watch. And again, it goes to show you just how big Ripple is in Japan, because they are working so closely with SBI, who is a massive, and I mean a massive Japan, financial name. So this is a huge, piece of the puzzle. But building on top of that, we also have this update, which is the new financial ecosystem and the role of central banks. So this got posted from Matthew Lin. We have Japan Central Bank to implement a new financial blockchain AI ecosystem, AI and blockchain prospects for a new financial ecosystem, taking a look at blockchain technology, a notable characteristic of decentralized finance. Now, within this document, I mean, it's a pretty lengthy document. It's not too bad, obviously. I mean, there's like, 7 pages here? Yeah, 7 pages. I just want to go over a few things, right? So we go back to just like the introduction of this. So the year 2016, when the first FinSum was held, marked a milestone for the Bank of Japan as well. We established the FinTech Center that very year, taking into account the growing momentum in FinTech efforts and our support for these developments as the central bank, such that they would contribute to enhancing financial services and ultimately achieving sustainable growth in Japan's economy. What's funny about that is 1 year later, and we have 47 banks tapped in with Ripple. Now, this year's theme is the new financial ecosystem shaped by AI and blockchain. So AI and blockchain have been significant topics of interest at the bank since its founding of the FinTech Center, assuming application of these technologies in the areas of finance and payments. The FinTech Center conducted joint research with the European Central Bank. Now, this is huge because we also know that the ECB has major connections back to Ripple as well. Identifying opportunities and possible challenges that blockchain could bring to financial market infrastructures. The bank's Institute for Monetary and Economic Studies also held workshops to explore legal considerations surrounding issues such as the use of DLT in security settlements and the use of algorithms and AI. Fast forward 10 years, blockchain technology has entered the implementation phase. So they're telling us that, yes, the implementation phase of blockchain is now here in a wide range of financial services. Coupled with the rapid advancement of generative AI, these developments have paved the way for innovative moves to create a financial ecosystem for a new era. In this vein, today, I would like to talk about the role of central banks in this new financial ecosystem. Now, obviously, they're addressing cross-border payments. They're talking about DeFi itself. And they're just talking about, like, again, like if we think about, central banks, like what's the use of central banks in a system like this? There really isn't much of a use for central banks unless we have CBDCs. Now, they do have down here that for the time being, the coexistence of multiple systems employing blockchains and a more conventional system is expected. It is necessary to consider the possibility that while settlements are conducted smoothly within the individual systems, the same cannot be said for the conversions of payment instruments among different systems. In other words, a lack of interoperability as well as the challenges that come with this. And all I can think about is quant with QNT, obviously. But again, like the main focus here is that like they want to advance payments and finance and the entire system using tokenized central bank money. We have here that alternatively, it is also plausible to secure and provide a mechanism under which transactions of assets on blockchains are settled with the central bank money. This could be achieved by either settling assets with tokenized central bank money on the blockchain or by connecting the existing system for the central bank money with a new system for transactions on the blockchain. This is from the Bank of Japan confirming that, yes, it's either going to be tokenized central bank money on the blockchain or an interlinkage between the existing system for central bank money and a new system for transactions, again, on the blockchain. Either way, we have blockchain being integrated into the central bank system. This is absolutely wild. Again, when we think about what's happening here, it goes to show you exactly where we are headed. Now, their first phase here is the ongoing pilot program for retail central bank digital currency, initiatives. It involves the bank's continued conduct of technical experiments, which will make it possible to provide as an effective anchor of trust in a new financial ecosystem, a digital form of cash when in demand by the wider public. In this pilot program, the bank is engaging in technical experimentation on the CBDC system while managing the CBDC forum, though which it draws upon the skills and insights of private businesses. Interesting. You mean like what? Ripple? Because Ripple is a private business. And this is all regarding the view of the future payment system and future payments. Now, they also build on top of Project Agora. This is the next phase, which is, obviously, multiple central banks and major private sector financial institutions. It's ultimately just building a mechanism that would enable central banks, including the Bank of Japan, to issue central bank money as tokenized deposits on the blockchain, and then smart contracts can be utilized for tokenized deposits. But again, like all of this is to essentially build out this new financial system. Like they're talking about AI and blockchain and properly fulfilling its role as the anchor of trust in a new financial ecosystem. Because again, a new system is on its way. A new system is nearly here. And it goes back to like the whole idea that like Ripple is constantly pushing ahead in Japan. Back in the end of, 2025, Ripple expands Japan push with major bank partnerships. And these were all of the major players. Obviously, this was through like a community initiative. But again, Ripple is still working with all of these major banks in Japan. Do not forget these connections. Like these connections are huge, especially even the SBI one. Especially at a time where the Central Bank of Japan is literally telling you, hey, we plan on having a full-on integration with, blockchain with the central bank system. This is absolutely insane. I would argue that Ripple and XRP have the highest probability chance of being integrated into the system, especially going over like the 10 plus years of, connections back to Japan. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video.